Friends, today I'm handling one of the most difficult theories of sociology, and that is ethnomethodology. Actually, uh, to be true, it took me a very long time to understand what ethnomethodology is, and I'm sure that you also have problems in understanding the concept and applications of ethnomethodology in sociology. I will be simple. I will try to be as simple as possible and give you some examples from your daily life. And I will also present the basic concepts of ethnomethodology so that you can relate to them. Friends, have you ever reflected on some of the following things? That you believe that your political leader is speaking the truth, even without knowing what the truth is. You don't feel a need to verify the truth. The treatment prescribed by an AIMS expert, All India Institute of Medical Science, a specialist, is more authoritative and closer to truth than that of your family doctor. But this may not always be true. When somebody asks you how you are or how are you, the question is how are you, you respond. All of us respond in the same way. I am fine, thank you, how are you? You do not ever ask the question whether it was about your health or finances or family issues, because you know that in your context, in your culture, in the milieu in which you live, this question is a part of politeness behavior. The person who is asking you, how are you, is actually not interested in your health or finances or family issues. And you also respond in the same manner, that in your context, in your culture, it is proper to answer this question in this way. Coroners classify roadside deaths into accidents and suicides on the basis of certain understanding of suicides, which may not always be true. So ultimate statistic that they produce, that this year there were so many accidents and so many suicides, etc., are based not so much on empirical data, but more on the understanding of suicides or circumstances of suicides uh, lying in the mind of coroners. Your assessment of my lectures depends on your knowledge of my background. It is less important whether my lectures are good or bad. If somebody tells you that Professor A.K. Sharma spent his life teaching in a small PG college in a remote area in some district, then you will think that the lecture is ordinary. But if somebody tells you that this A.K. Sharma spent his life teaching in a central university of India, or preferably in Chicago or Oxford, then you will think that the lecture is great. It has not so much to do with the lecture, but more to do with your understanding of whether I am capable of delivering a good lecture or not. So Garfinkel in 1967 developed a revolutionary idea, a new theory, and he called it ethnomethodology. Ethno means culture or local or folk or tribal. Methodology means methodology. What is local methodology of arriving at truth? Now, ethnomethodology is a very general word. Ethnomethodology, local or folk methodology of understanding the social order. This includes economy, polity, culture, religion, law, everything. It's a critique of positivistic theories in sociology, which believe in facts, relationships between facts, verifiability of facts, and that facts can be ascertained by using empirical or mathematical approach in sociology. Rather, this theory says that there is no real social order in society in which we live. Then, if there is no real social order, how do we participate in society? And how do we have certain expectations of behavior from others? How do we believe that our society is orderly? So it explains, this theory explains the process of understanding of facts and social order rather than facts or social order themselves. It's a study of common sense. Based on ideas of existential sociology, suits, etc., symbolic interactionism, phenomenology, and subjective meanings, but it's quite different from them. It builds on empirical studies of social interaction and meaning making, also called conversation analysis. The theory claims that social life looks orderly because people actively engage in making sense of it. There are three central ideas of ethnomethodology. Let us learn what they are, and then you can attempt to apply ethnomethodological theory to facts of your life, so-called facts of your life. One, that people are accountable to members of their social world. You live in a social world. You have a family, you have neighborhood, you have college, you have uh, a political system, educational system, uh, a financial order, or some system of generating and distributing wealth, and you think that this is legitimate, or some people may think that it's not legitimate and it must change. But for all of them, there is some kind of social order. And we want to explain our behavior uh, to others in terms of uh, what can be a justifiable act in the moral framework or social or cultural framework of society in which we live, social world. That technical term would be social world. The social world may be local, it need not be regional or national or international. Local social world. That's why ethno. It is ethno. Folk, local understanding of something, local methodology of understanding truth. And this local methodology of understanding truth may differ from process of understanding of truth in other cultures or uh, other uh, other groups. Second is documentary method. Third is indexicality. So if you have to write an answer on ethnomethodology, you always mention documentary method and indexicality. I will explain what this means. So these are three concepts. Let me take up them one by one. That people are accountable to members of their social world. What does it mean? It means that they describe and explain their action to others in terms of what is their understanding of acceptable and reasonable to them and also to others, which means uh, that this accountability will differ from culture to culture, context to context. And this also means that different people in the same context, depending on their background, their understanding of the situation, um, and the understanding of the nature of act that they are trying to explain, will also differ from others. Is it not true that sometimes criminals accept their indulgence in criminal behavior and explain to their family members and neighbors? We also do this very commonly. We pick up cases of heinous crime and we explain them in moral and religious terms. Uh, and that is how society gets divided also, because different cultures or different folks or different groups or different communities may have different understandings of the same act, or the purpose behind the intention behind the act, or consequences of the act for people around them, or society or culture, or uh, world community. How do teachers develop the notion of merit? And how do they justify and convey their classification of merit to students? It's a very difficult job to do. I have been a teacher and I know how difficult it is. If you are a reflective teacher, it becomes very difficult for you to classify students into A category, B category, C category, because you know that your classification depends on certain definitions of merit. And these definitions of merit can be contrasted by students and certainly by other teachers. So if you are a reflective teacher, you always take a defensive side. You feel guilty sometimes that your classification of students according to grades or marks uh, is, uh, is not beyond doubt. You may try to apply objective norms as much as possible. You may be honest and you may be objective, but still there is a scope for doubting your judgment. What is documentary method? The concept of documentary method says that people select certain aspects of the infinite number of features of a situation and the context, develop a pattern of understanding, and use that pattern to explain those features. Something similar to developing an understanding of class in complex social phenomena, and then using class theory to predict and explain all social phenomena. Social phenomena are complex, but there are many people who think that this complexity is actually not a complexity if you uh, really think in terms of the class structure of society. If you believe in the class structure, you try to explain complex social facts in terms of class relations, then things are easy. And you can explain everything in society on the basis of class. Or an economist who uses econometrics theory uh, develops or describes features of poverty in terms of certain statistical models, power law or normal law or log normal law, uh, and believes that this is how poverty should be described. Sometimes I used to ask this question or comment that in many very good seminars of economics, they pose a problem. Problem looks quite economic type, uh, quite economics type. But then they go to alpha, beta, and the whole treatment of the subject is in terms of notations, mathematics, differential integral calculus, or complex theories. And finally, again, they arrive at some conclusion. Now, this is what an econometrician is doing, because econometrician's understanding of poverty is bound by his belief in um, the truthfulness or inevitability or objectivity or corroboration of uh, certain statistical or mathematical models of poverty. Maybe by studying some small features of poverty, he believed that a particular statistical distribution applies to that. Say, log normal distribution of income. He believed that log normal distribution applies to distribution of income. And then indiscriminately, everywhere where he finds discussion of economic data on per capita income or income according to countries or regions or district, he starts applying that. Garfinkel makes us conscious of the fact that what we are describing in terms of these mathematical and statistical models are actually determined by belief in these models. And this belief in these models among econometricians develops on the basis of study of certain selected features of poverty, not the entire gamut of poverty. Garfinkel made an experiment. He brought he called some students and told them that today we have a counselor, a very renowned counselor, who will answer all your questions. And there were certain conditions. The counselor was sitting in the other room. Students were sitting in a different room. And they were asking their questions one by one. The condition was that questions should be framed in such a manner that the counselor can answer either as yes or no. And in this experiment, yeses and no's were all randomized. There was no pattern. Means there was no counselor. There was no human counselor who was trying to understand students' problem, and only randomly responses in the form of yeses and no's were coming. What surprised him was that in this experiment, students asked all kinds of questions. Questions related to their career, their social relations, uh, their mental conflicts, health, everything. And all of them, or most of them, were satisfied with the counseling. Sometimes it happens in some cases that students were not fully satisfied with yes or no. But then when the so-called counselor contradicted students' views, means students thought that the counselor needed extra information. So students gave extra information and asked that, sir, if this is the situation, then what will you suggest? Will you suggest this or that? Do you agree with this? The answer is yes or no. Now, this gave rise to this concept of documentary method. Students believe that there is a counselor. Counselor is trustworthy. Counselor knows human psychology. Counselor understands social issues very well. So what he's saying in the form of yes or no is the real thing that suits them the best. Another concept is indexicality. And according to this concept, sense or meaning of what you understand by something is indexed in a given context, which means there's, if you take a dictionary and take a word like round, you may find dozens of meanings of the word round. If you take a word like nationalism, in dictionary or in general conversations, you can discern a large number of meanings of nationalism. But when somebody in your context uses the term round, you immediately understand what this is. If somebody says that some officer is corrupt, now corrupt may have different meanings in dictionary, or the term corrupt may be used in different senses in different contexts. But in your context, you always understand, oh, he's corrupt. That means he's like this. Or she's corrupt. She's like this. And your sense of an action depends on the context of the activity. You never have any problem with any word unless it it comes to you for the first time. So anything which is said to you, you understand that, and you understand that in a given context, you do not start, like I said, round. You do not start thinking that round has these so many meanings, and in when somebody is uttering the word round, it means this. You know, it is natural for you. So Garfinkel is trying to understand this naturalness of meanings in a given social context. Now, the same words may mean different things in different contexts. This implies that the same words of language have different meanings in different contexts. Uh, one can learn about order through ethnomethodological experiments. So how do we know? How do we know the nature of social order? And Garfinkel suggests that you can learn about social order by conducting ethnomethodological experiments. What is that? Learning by disrupting the social order. Imagine that you are a student, and today when you go to take food in your mess, you start shouting or you start singing a song, a classical song, or uh, you go in a stage of drunkenness. You are intoxicated, heavily intoxicated. This disrupts the social order. And depending on your understanding of uh, why is it disrupted, what were people's expectations from you, what happens when you disrupt social order, you develop an understanding of social order in the mess. Uh, you have several roles in society, and uh, you find yourself sometime in the role of a son, sometime in the role of a student, sometime in the role of a boyfriend, and so on. You understand that in a given context how to behave. Imagine that you start behaving like a son in the classroom, or boyfriend in the context of your family, or in church, or in temple, or in mosque. It will disrupt social order. Garfinkel says that by disrupting social order, you can understand, you can have a better understanding of what social order meant to people. Have you ever seen that jokes are largely based on using meaning of words in a general context to some specific context in which meaning is actually very different? So you take a word which in the general context means something, but in very, very specific context, it means something else. And you have a joke. Quite often, actually, most of the time, jokes are based on wrong applications of words. Wrong in the sense that as far as the general understanding of those words, general meanings of those words are concerned, they are correct. But in a specific context, they are used in a different sense. So then you have a joke. If you look at ethnomethodology and its contributions and limitations, the contribution part is that it is extremely important contribution to study of sense making or understanding. It leads to a more humane approach in sociology. Actually, this is something which goes in favor of all phenomenological or symbolic interactionist type of theories. And it can be better used in cases of uh, conflict resolution at the local level. But there are limitations. Ethnomethodology is not useful for theory making, predictions, and developing programs, developmental programs, welfare programs, health, education, housing programs at regional and national levels. There is no specific methodological contribution for empirical studies. If you are an ethnomethodologist, you only believe in that by disrupting social order, you can learn about social order. But there is no specific methodology. There is no specific research design. There is no specific sampling technique. There is no questionnaire. There is no specific observation methods or focus group discussion that will help you, that ethnomethodologist gives you to understand social phenomena. And it's not useful for survey and fieldwork. Thank you, friends. I know it's a very difficult issue, but I believe that with this presentation of mine, you are introduced to the idea of ethnomethodology. Ethnomethodology claims that facts are not facts, social order is not social order. Facts become facts uh, uh, because of certain approach of understanding that we apply to study facts. Social order becomes social order because you perceive it that way. And by participating in social order, by explaining this social order to other members of your social world, you create that a kind of myth that social order exists or social order is good. Thank you very much.